You want things. You probably have a list of them, even if you've never written it down. Recognition, security, a legacy of some kind, the feeling that you mattered, that you left something behind, that the people in your life will remember who you were. Now, here's the question nobody asks about that list. Where did it come from? Not the specific items, but the urgency behind them. The particular discomfort you feel when progress slows. The way being forgotten or overlooked or replaceable feels like something more than inconvenience, something closer to threat. In 1986, three psychologists at the University of Arizona published a theory that proposed a disturbing answer. They argued that the deepest engine driving human ambition, human culture, and human behavior isn't love or curiosity or the desire for connection. It's the knowledge that you are going to die. And the lengths the human brain will go to avoid sitting with that fact fully, directly, without distraction may account for more of your daily behavior than you have ever been willing to consider. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what terror management theory claims, what the evidence actually shows, and why it might explain something about your own life that you haven't wanted to look at directly. Before the theory, there was a book. In 1973, a cultural anthropologist named Ernest Becker published The Denial of Death. He had been working on it for years, driven by a question he couldn't let go of. What is actually motivating human behavior at its deepest level? His answer was stark. Human civilization, he argued, is not primarily a product of creativity or curiosity or social instinct. It is a defense mechanism, an elaborate, species-wide system of beliefs, structures, and projects built to manage one specific terror, the knowledge that we are mortal, that our bodies will decay, and that the self we've spent a lifetime constructing will one day cease to exist entirely. Becker called this the vital lie, the set of beliefs and behaviors that keeps us functional in the face of something the conscious mind cannot fully absorb. He won the Pulitzer Prize in 1974. He never found out. He died 2 months before the announcement. But here's the thing. 3 psychologists read that book and asked a question Becker himself couldn't answer. Is any of this actually testable? Jeff Greenberg, Sheldon Solomon, and Tom Pyszczynski spent years turning Becker's philosophical argument into something a laboratory could examine. Their 1986 paper, The Causes and Consequences of a Need for Self-Esteem, published in a volume edited by Roy Baumeister at Springer, introduced what they called terror management theory. The core claim was specific. When humans are reminded of their mortality, even briefly, even unconsciously, their behavior changes in measurable ways. They cling harder to their cultural identity. They judge those who violate their values more harshly. They seek reassurance that they matter. The mechanism they proposed had 2 parts. The first, cultural worldview as a shield. Culture, your values, your nation, your religion, your group, functions as a buffer against death anxiety by suggesting that life has meaning, that there is an order to things, and that you are a valued participant in something larger than yourself, something that will outlast you. The second, self-esteem as armor. When your sense of worth is high, death anxiety stays suppressed. When it drops, anxiety breaks through. This is why the feeling of being irrelevant, overlooked, or forgotten carries such disproportionate weight. Your brain isn't just registering a social slight, it's registering a threat to its primary defense against mortality. This was the framework. Now they needed to test it. Here's where most people's assumptions get quietly dismantled. When you hear fear of death, you picture something conscious, a dark moment at 3 a.m., a health scare, a funeral, something you feel, acknowledge, and then set aside as life continues. But here's the part almost nobody talks about: terror management. Theory doesn't claim that people are consciously thinking about death. It claims the opposite, that the entire system is designed to prevent conscious awareness of death from occurring. The anxiety is managed precisely by being kept below the surface, rerouted into ambition, into status seeking, into meaning making, into the 1,000 ordinary things that feel like genuine desire but may function as distraction. Greenberg, Solomon, and Pyszczynski tested this directly. In a series of experiments, participants were subliminally exposed to death-related words, flashed so briefly the conscious mind couldn't register them. Death awareness was triggered without any conscious thought about death at all. The behavioral effects appeared anyway. Worldview defense increased, in-group favoritism sharpened. The need to feel significant became measurably stronger. The system doesn't need your awareness to run. It runs whether you're watching it or not. In 1989, Rosenblatt, Greenberg, Solomon, Pischinsky, and Lyon published what became one of the theory's most cited pieces of evidence in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. They recruited municipal court judges, real judges with real legal experience. They divided them into two groups. One group was asked to briefly think about their own death, to write a few sentences about what would happen to them physically when they died, and the emotions that thought brought up. The other group answered unrelated questions. Then both groups were given an identical case file, a woman charged with prostitution, standard municipal case. They were asked to set her bond. Judges who had thought about their own death set the bond at an average of $455. Judges in the control group set it at an average of $50, 9 times higher. Same case, same legal training, same professional context. One brief reminder of mortality, and the judgment shifted dramatically, with no judge aware of why. But here's where it gets strange. The judges weren't thinking about death when they made the decision. The mortality prompt had come earlier. What happened wasn't conscious. It was the system running quietly, tightening values, increasing the need to enforce order, expressing itself through a legal decision that felt, to the person making it, entirely rational. This is what unconscious death anxiety looks like when it leaks into the world. Here's what the research honestly cannot tell you. It cannot tell you how much of your specific ambitions trace back to mortality management and how much traces to something more genuinely yours. The theory doesn't claim that everything you want is just disguised death anxiety, only that death anxiety is woven through human motivation in ways that are largely invisible, constantly operating, and almost impossible to fully separate from the desires you experience as authentic. That's not a clean answer, but it's the honest one. What the evidence does show is this: the drive to matter, to leave something behind, to be remembered. These aren't weaknesses or vanities. They're the result of a brain that found a way to live with an impossible fact. Your brain looked at the knowledge of its own extinction and, instead of collapsing, built a civilization. Remember Ernest Becker, the man who started all of this. He finished writing about the denial of death while he was actually dying. He sat with the exact question his entire career had circled: what do humans do with the terror of their own mortality? And he didn't look away from it. He wrote through it instead. So here is the question worth sitting with. If some of what you're building is a defense against a fear you've never looked at directly, what would you choose to build if you looked at it and kept building anyway? The fear doesn't go away. It never has for any human who ever lived. But there might be a difference between running from it and knowing it's there. We just rarely stop long enough to find out which one we're doing.